If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark. The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View. All right, it's Jessie. I'm so happy to be back with you. And if you haven't realized, my Saturday segment, I have a 4-hour block. It's called Saturday Slowdown. Reason for that is I can slow down and take a look at topics that don't fit into my regular 1-hour show. They're not breaking news. They're not terrorists. They're not North Korea. They're just fun and interesting, at least to me, and I hope you find them too. Interesting as well. All right, I've got a guest for you. I like to have guests on Saturdays. Makes the day more interesting. He is from Australia. His name's Assaph Mehr, and he's an author, a published author. And I'm going to let Assaph finish explaining and introducing himself.
All right. Hello, guys. Like Jesse said, I'm an author. So recent development in my life. I hail from Australia, though originally I'm from Israel, and I write historical fantasy. which is a blending of real history and lots of fantasy, two of my favorite genres.
Historical fantasy. That does sound very fascinating. And originally from Israel. I was wondering about the name. So are you Jewish?
Personally, I don't believe in much except, celebrating the public holidays. But, culturally
by birth.
Jewish. Yes, culturally
okay.
Jewish.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So what made you decide you wanted to start writing, and how did you choose historical fantasy?
Okay. It's a complex question, so I can probably start with a bit of a background. So I've been reading since I was 5. Had to scream at the librarian that I need a library card, even though they only give them out to kids who are at 6 and at school, because I can read already. And I had my nose buried in a book. I loved history since I first read Asterix comics. I loved reading everything. Mysteries, Agatha Christie, Alistair MacLean, sci-fi, all the classics like Asimov and Heinlein, fantasy like Tolkien, etc. And just generally had my nose in a book. And I always had this dream of, well, someday maybe I'll write a book and, see my name in print. That'll be cool. Never actually got around to it. And last year, my wife at some point one evening said, well, that's it. I finished the last good book that I wanted to read and there's nothing left to read. So I said, okay, good night. And went to my computer and started writing and didn't stop writing until I actually had a book ready to give her.
Wow. So basically your wife's love of reading and the fact that she couldn't find a book she wanted to read made you... Yeah. How long is your book and what's the title?
The title of my book is Murder in Absentia. In absentia is a legal term, meaning in the absence of, which will be explained more in the book itself. But it's, like I said, historical fantasy. It centers on ancient Rome, or a fantasy variation of ancient Rome. It sounds
fascinating. So I'm guessing since it deals with murder, it's kind of a mystery? Or is it more of a thriller, or a little bit of both? A
little bit of both. So the novel starts with the protagonist, Felix, being hired to resolve what looks like a cult murder or a cult-related death of the son of a prominent senator. And he goes around and tries to investigate it, tries to find the cult that did it, and bits of sleuthing, a bit of investigating and interviewing people, bits of running around the place and then traveling to exotic places and then having some wonderful adventures. And then comes to a rather interesting conclusion, which I will obviously not give.
No need to spoil it. What's your website and where can people buy your book?
My book is available on Amazon, and the website is egretia.com, egretia.com. That's the name of the city, the name of the world that the adventure takes on. I've decided to make it a fantasy world rather than based on ancient Rome, because after doing hours and months of research into it, I decided I don't actually want to be tied down to a particular period in Rome. I don't want to be tied to a particular set of people and events, but I want to mix in elements. So actually had a bit like a fantasy world, had the freedom to pick and choose elements from ancient Roman history to, pre-Republic era to throughout the Republic and then the Empire. So it's a bit of it's not a history book, but it has a lot of historical elements from all over the place in it.
So how much time did you actually spend researching this? How long did it take you to write this? Tell me about your journey.
Okay. I've been reading novels set in ancient Rome for a long time. Like I said, ever since I first met Asterix, probably. Had this fascination with Rome. When I was 13, my parents took me to Rome on a trip, and I do remember them dragging me to some boring churches in the Vatican, etc. And I was whinging that, all the tiny little naked cherubs looked the same. But as soon as we went outside to the ancient Roman ruins, I was happy to skip around and lecture everybody who was listening about Etruscan origins and then various architectural features. So that has been a love of my life for quite a bit of time. I've read a lot of Roman fiction, historical fiction, proper historical fiction, and detectives like Colin McCullough, Stephen Saylor, Lindsay Davis, all very well-known authors in recent years. So I always had this good understanding of Rome in my mind. I've also been reading a lot non-fiction books about Rome, but the military, the culture, etc. When I started writing, obviously I had to step up my reading more into the non-fiction type doing more proper research. Research a lot, both before I started and as I started the book. So, like I mentioned, starting the book was a bit of a random act of craziness one night. And so I did a lot of research as I was writing.
Did you ever find while you were writing that your characters would try and run away with the plot line and take it off in its own direction or things like that? Because I hear that from other authors.
Yes. Not exactly. I had the mystery in my head, so I knew what happened and why. And I basically chucked my protagonist into the deep end. I knew where he was supposed to end. I have no idea about how he's going to get there. And sort of let him try his best. And as he came up with, okay, I need to talk to these people. So, okay, let's tell you what they say. And I said, oh, okay, I actually need to go there and investigate that bit. So, okay, I'll tell you what happens there. So it was more of a collaboration between me and him.
So is your protagonist, Felix, is he kind of your alter ego? Does he live the life you wish you could? Or how did you develop your character?
Yes, in a way, he's an idealized version of, not quite of myself, but of my fantasy self, I'd say. He's a jack of all trades. He's a master of none. The world does involve magic, but he does have some understanding of it, but he's not a master of it. He's not a master sleuth or a great, sword fighter or anything. He does like to keep his skin intact and get paid and retire at the end of the day. So not quite myself. He's a bit more adventurous than me, probably. But it was interesting to have this conversation with him.
So when you were writing, what was your biggest challenge?
In writing the first book, I set myself a goal to write a certain number of words per day. For the first novel, I met that goal fairly easily.
So you said first novel, so you're writing a sequel.
Yes, I am. It's a second mystery involving the same character in the same world. So for the first one, it was just I was actually hiding in a cave, going down to my study at night when everybody was asleep and just banging out the words on the keyboard and having lots of fun and reading even historical references to integrate them into the story. And then I discovered what the real challenges of writing are, which is, editing and marketing and all that. Now when I try to write, I actually had a baby in between the first book and the two. He's 10 months old now and he's cute as a button, but he does take my my time at night to read. I do find now that if I have time at night, I'd like to sleep. So
you're finding time more of a challenge in writing the sequel.
Yep.
How long did it take you to write the first one?
The first draft I finished in about 4 months and a bit. That was quite quick.
That is fast.
Yeah. Editing, etc., and producing the book took about double that. So took almost a year to do the complete book start to finish.
So Oh, no, what were you going to say?
Oh, if I can do the second book in a year or a book per year, I'll be ecstatic. I have to say that the second book is taking a bit longer because I have more demands on my time right now. But I am working through it. I think once you start, you get hooked and you just can't stop.
True. As I've alluded before in some of my podcasts, I do have an interest in writing myself. I find time is my biggest challenge. There are only 24 hours in a day.
Absolutely.
And you say you also work a paying job, so what do you do?
I work in IT. Officially, I'm a software product manager. I work for a small software company. We make the very exciting productivity tools for lawyers, and I have a product line which I manage, and that's about as exciting as it gets. I mean, I actually enjoy the job. It's quite nice. It's just not as fun as flashy as writing magical mysteries in ancient fantasy worlds.
So is writing a stress relief for you, or is it just pure fun, or?
It adds more to my stress, if anything. Because, you constantly keep thinking, oh my God, I didn't finish my quota for today. I want to write more. And you get to the night and it's like, I had, 9 hours at the office and then 3 hours with the baby and then, cooking and cleaning and then doing stuff around the house and playing with the kids and spending time with the wife. And it's now 11 and I need to write, but I'm so knackered. So I wouldn't say writing is a stress relief, but writing is it's such a boost. It's such a, how do I say it? When you actually get something done, it's such a tremendous feeling of accomplishment, of creative outlet, that it's worth all the hassle.
That's good. Now, you told me before we started the interview that you self-published. What made you decide to go that route, and what challenges did you face?
All right. I think I've heard plenty of horror stories about people going to traditional publishers. I knew what my chances are as an author that nobody heard of actually getting accepted into a traditional publisher. And I decided that basically I'd rather not waste that time. Consider myself reasonably intelligent and competent, so I figured, hey, I can do it. I could probably do it even better. And then I could discover that, yes, I can. It just takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of learning how to do it properly. So there were obviously things I haven't done quite as well launching the first book, etc., which I will be rectifying when I'm launching the second book.
All right, so what were those pitfalls that you had when you were launching your first book?
All right. One of them is, I think you mentioned in the intro, is an author who wrote my novel in a cave. Basically, wrote it for myself. It was the story that I wanted to read. It's a blending of history and fantasy because I just enjoy those elements. And then I had this novel and I didn't quite know what to do with it. So then I started to look around and then edit it myself and then get some beta readers to help me polish it and then edit it some more. But I had no real audience to market it to. So that took a while to build. And while I started building it before I actually put the book up in Amazon, it takes a long time to build a proper author platform, get people interested in what you write. It's a bit of a catch-22 because you need to show that you have something before you actually have something. And then the things I will say is that never skimp on a good cover, good professional cover. Never skimp on a good professional proofreading. So I worked with quite a few beta readers and I think I managed to polish the book in terms of editing to quite a good degree. But because I was editing it after the feedbacks, etc., running it past a professional proofreader or copy editor is an absolute must before releasing it. Does reflect quite a bit about the quality of the book. And having a good cover, a professionally designed cover, is again something that does make a difference.
I personally read, I'm a very avid reader, and I do read both traditionally published and self-published books. And I will say that it's a short list, but there are a few self-published books because of the errors, because of the mistakes, and because of the way they were written, I couldn't get into. Now, I haven't had a chance to grab yours yet. You're in Australia, so was it written in US English, Australian English, UK English?
Well, the Oxford Dictionary defines it either as American English or world English, because the rest of the world speaks the same English. It's just you Americans that are different. No, I've written it in Australian English, which is standard UK type English, which means colour is spelled with a U, like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Most of the market is American, and I don't think any one of them cared much about that. I just had to find a good proofreader that was familiar with UK English, that's all.
Was that a challenge to find a good proofreader or editor that was familiar with UK English?
Not so much. So the UK people are a bit stuck up. Actually found an American editor who was familiar with UK English. That worked out a lot better, just in terms of quality and ease of working with, etc. But in terms of readership, I don't think it actually makes a big difference. I know that there is a American version of J.K. Rowling novels where they actually changed all the spelling to not confuse the American readership. I don't think that really matters much. I think most fantasy readers are familiar with world literature, shall we call it.
I was going to say, when you mentioned J.K. Rowling, they also changed the title of the second book from Philosopher's Stone to Sorcerer's Stone.
Yes. Yeah.
As well as the spellings. I haven't actually read both versions to compare them side by side, but it is interesting that you compare the difference in the writing that way. So how long did it take you to build your author platform? What were the challenges of building your author platform?
I'm still building it. So I started probably about a year ago. So after I finished the first one and the first draft, and then started to write it. I have my own blog, agretia.com, as I mentioned. On it I published short stories with Felix, and I also publish whatever else crosses my mind. It also has resources about the novels, like the maps from the book, the glossary, contact page, all that things. I'm quite active on social media, Facebook, Goodreads, Twitter, etc. Always connecting with more people. I think as a new author, the biggest challenge is probably getting reviews for your book. So reviews on Amazon and on Goodreads drive a lot of the sales, a lot of the engagement. And the more reviews you have, the more likely Amazon is to put your novel in those. People have also bought little line at the bottom, so people will get more exposure to your book, etc. So getting the reviews, you can either hope people buy it and leave a review. That's not usually a very good strategy. Or you can find people who are interested in your book and get them to leave a review. So I'm basically offering a free copy in exchange for an honest review for anyone who's interested. So I pick up conversations over Twitter or Facebook and etc. And anyone says, "Oh yeah, your book sounds interesting." I say, "Well, if you want a free copy in exchange for an honest review, just let me know." So I've handed out quite a few copies that way. But half of them came back and then left a review on Amazon or Goodreads, which is pretty decent. So yeah.
A 50% success, that's more than some people can claim.
Well, it takes a while to, pick up the conversation from complete strangers and work it out to them, work it out that, they're actually interested in those kind of books, that kind of genre, and offer them. And not everybody takes you up on it. And it's sort of like a classic sales funnel. If you're familiar with sales marketing and sales funnels, you have a large group of people who never heard of you. So you're going down to people who've heard of you. So people are working down to a group of people who's interested in you, down to, at the very bottom, a small group of people who are loyal customers or loyal fans. So just working to that model. Actually blogged about that model recently on my blog, and it's been getting a lot of interest from other indie authors because it just kind of summarizes how you start when you have nothing to building up engagement and building up presence and interest in your novel on a reasonably short time. All I'll say is it does take constant effort. It's never something that you can really hang back and do nothing. Even, unless your name is Rowling or King or Martin, if you're going to publish a book, you do need to work on getting those reviews and getting the information out.
I've heard that some people use paid services to get reviews. Have you gone down that road, or do you plan on it with the second novel?
Nope. So I know that you can buy reviews. You can buy dishonest reviews and you can buy honest reviews. So avoid at all costs buying the dishonest reviews, because Amazon will just delete them and nobody takes them seriously. And Amazon might actually penalize you later. Buying honest reviews like Kirkus, etc., is a bit of a mixed bag. I personally haven't gone that way. I've heard mixed results from people, so I don't know. Can't say one way or another. I know that I'd rather just pick up and a conversation and talk to people. So
how much time a week or a day do you spend doing things like being active on Twitter, being active in writers groups, and what social media source is your favorite?
Probably spend far too much time on social media. I probably need a fan.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Yeah. I said only yesterday to someone that I'd really like a fan like Anne Wilkes, somebody who chain me to the desk and force me to write at gunpoint. I think that'll be lovely. I'll have no more excuses why I'm on social media.
Yeah.
For those not familiar, it's a fan from Misery, Stephen King's Misery. I could use my ankles though. I'd like to keep my ankles intact. How much time do I spend? I spend maybe a couple of hours per day doing that. On and off throughout the day. Mostly I use Twitter. I use Facebook quite a bit. I'm active in a few groups. I've used Goodreads in the beginning. Bit more mixed results there. And the reason I use Twitter the most is that Goodreads have two types of groups: author support groups and reader support groups. Author support groups are a lot of authors talking about it, right? So Goodreads is built of author support groups and reader groups. The author support groups are filled with other authors that are facing similar challenges, etc. So it could be a good place to get advice and get people's opinion about things, but not necessarily to get more readers. Reader groups don't really want to hear from authors. They like to read their own stuff, and they don't like to be bombarded with, "Ooh, I'm an author, buy my book." Nobody cares about that. Facebook groups are somewhat similar, sometimes a bit more lenient, but somewhat similar. Twitter, I find, is just really easy to pick up conversations with people. A lot of tags about reading and editing and fantasy, etc., and pick up a conversation with people and start getting to know them, etc. One thing that I'd say It's true for almost all social media, for your blog, for everything. Is a lot of authors I see make this mistake. They have an automated message or any kind of automatic reply and things that say, ooh, me, check my platform, check my book, read my stuff, buy my stuff. And it's like, I don't care, really. I barely know you. So don't bombard people. Anyone who follows me got a funny message about my cats. And yes, my cats is actually recommending my books, but that's beside the point. And I'm also recommending other authors that I've read, etc. Through that automated message. And I do the same with every engagement. I always make it about the reader. It's like, hey, if you chose to follow me, you probably like reading. Check out these cool books and stuff like that. So once I've actually established some contact with them and actually got into a conversation, it's like, yeah, look, I also write, historical fantasy. If you're into that sort of thing, you can check it out. I find that works a lot better because people kind of tend to tune out when you start, trying to forcibly get them to buy your stuff. Nobody is interested in that. Getting a real conversation, a real engagement is more effort, but worth it in the long term.
I was going to say, you get those handful, 10 or 12 fans that like your work, they'll talk about it for you.
Exactly.
And I think word of mouth, which is actually how my podcast is, information about my podcast is spread. It's better if it's not always you saying, hey, have you seen this book? Or have you heard of this author? Or, in my case, have you heard of this podcast? Which is one of the reasons I like to do such a variety of topics on my Saturday Slowdown segment. It gives me the time to explore anything that interests me, because I don't think people are one-dimensional.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I came across romance author and literary fiction, etc. And because I like to read things like that, etc., then we pick up a conversation about things entirely. And, I may not get a review out of it, but I get someone cool to speak with, which is fun by itself. And yes, occasionally I do get those diehard fans, those people who will talk and promote my books for me. So it's all good.
The diehard fan, I know I am a diehard fan of a well-known American author, and I've mentioned him before, so I'll bring it up here again. My favorite genre is thriller, although I'm an avid reader, so I'm probably going to have to pick up your book because it sounds completely fascinating. But my favorite author is Brad Thorpe. And what I love about him is he does his research, and that's what I find so fascinating. One of his books used the actual history of the Federal Reserve, which is a pretty dry topic, at least on the surface, and he wove it into a thriller.
Yeah.
And I love to see how people take real facts. That's one of the other reasons I'll probably pick up your book and blend them into their work and twist them around just a little bit, so you can't necessarily tell where the facts end and the fiction picks up. I think that's definitely what I look for in a good book. So, how long did it take you to start to get a foothold on your author platform and figure out whether okay, so you finished this manuscript, you've got the word part done. So then you've got to format it and get it through the Kindle process. Is it also available in paperback or just Kindle or
paperback too? So I'm a believer of play to your strength and pay for what you can't do. I work in my day job with documents all day long, so I know how documents are constructed to an intimate degree that will bore most people to death. So for me to format the documents into ebooks and paperback, etc., using Adobe InDesign and other tools was just a breeze. So I didn't have any problem with that. So the things that I'm less good at, like I said, I got a proofreader to make sure that everything is right, and I would recommend it to everybody because just nobody can catch all the errors, definitely not in their own work.
I was going to say, I did an interview with a freelance editor, Judy L. Moore, a little while back, a couple weeks ago, and she said that even as an editor herself, she's also a writer, she hires an editor for her own work because you get so attached to your writing and so involved. You can't see the forest for the trees. You can't see where the mistakes are and what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. I had the same with my beta readers. So those were like close friends and family, which I invited to, give me their harsh critique, and they did. And I sat down and cried in the corner and washed my face and told them thank you very much. And then took some time to come down and read through their critique and actually understand what they were trying to tell me. And my writing got better for it. So taking critique is very difficult. It's your own baby. You think it's, perfect, and how dare they not understand the genius of your work? But a lot of people are actually right. A lot of people, if they point something, there is something there that you should at least be conscious about. You may say, okay, they're actually wrong. I actually want to do it my own way, but at least it becomes a conscious decision. I think it was Neil Gaiman, one of his rules for writing. He said, when people tell you that something doesn't work for them, they're almost always right. When people are saying to you, this is wrong and how you fix it, they're almost always wrong. No absolutes, but kind of almost always. And that's very true, because if somebody says, look, there's something I can't see quite here, why is it like that? And you think about it and you can't realize it. And if they tell you, that word is out of place, so you shouldn't put that here, that's absolutely doesn't belong, then yeah, maybe not. But always invited criticism. When you receive it, no matter how much you think you prepared for it, it will still hurt. So calm down, take a deep breath, be very nice and polite, and then thank them for their effort, because those are people who owe you nothing. They took the time out of their busy lives to read your book and actually provide you with feedback. So thank them kindly for that, and then start very closely, very dispassionately, impassionately thinking about what they're telling you. Is it correct? What can you do to fix it? Should you fix it? And all that.
All right. I'm going to ask you just to hold on to your thoughts for just a moment while we go to a commercial break.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Thank you for hanging in there over that commercial break. Assaph Mehr is still with me. We're discussing writing. He is a published author, and I'm going to bring him back on. Assaph, what is your favorite genre to read? I mean, you told me you do a lot of research. What do you read when you're reading for fun?
I read everything that's well written. I mostly read, I think, historical fiction, particularly historical detectives, and fantasy. But I grew up reading everything, and if it's well written, I'll read and enjoy it. The last book I've read was, I think, literary fiction, a collection of short stories, literary fiction, which I absolutely loved. Oh, so here's a shout out. Dan Bury, B-U-R-I, his novel Pieces Like Pottery. A collection of short stories, literary fiction, and I think is an absolutely amazing author. So go check it out.
Cool. I love it when people recommend not just their books, but other books as well. I think it shows that, there are 365 days in a year. It's not going to take a year to read your book, so you're not intimidated if people buy other books as well.
No, and I think that's one of the great things about indie authors. All the indie authors realized, most of them realized that we're in this together. If somebody reads my book, or somebody reads your book doesn't mean that they want to read mine. I'm not stealing fans, right? Nobody would, let's say, J.K. Rowling fan will not touch George Martin books just because they're Rowling fans. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of support going on in the independent author community.
Yeah, I've actually been, like I said, I'm trying to do a series, if you will, on publishing in the literary world. So you said you had no problem formatting your book for Kindle or for paperback. When you write, do you just write in Microsoft Word? I've also heard people mention Scrivener and other writing software. Do you just sit down and use Word?
No, I use Scrivener. I've used YWrite originally, and it was not quite as polished. It had some nice features, but some things were a bit annoying in the editor, and definitely the export didn't work quite nice. So I converted everything to Scrivener, and it has a little bit of a learning curve, but it's an absolute dream to work with. And from there, or ebook directly, depending what I need to work with.
That's awesome. So you actually have chosen a software platform that makes your life easier.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing I did, actually. That first night when I decided to write writing, I said, well, I'm a software geek, so I'll choose the right software to do it. I'll do it properly. So, yep. Getting the right tool can help. I mean, I know that people do it with old-style notebooks, pen and paper, or Remington. You need to penalize yourself, and Scrivener is a dream to work with. It's worth it.
Well, that's awesome. So, all right. So you sat down, you found the software, you started writing, you finished the first one, you're working on the second. When do you anticipate that you'll be ready to publish the second book, and what advantages do you think you have? You mentioned something about getting a professional cover. Mm-hmm. So I assume you're going to make sure you do that from the start with the second one and things like that. Did you not have a professional cover the first time, or was there a downfall there?
Yes. So I had a particular image in mind, particular illustration that sort of like somewhat similar to the Lighthouse of Alexandria. I found a couple of things on DeviantArt. I tried to contact the artist, but he didn't respond, so I ended up advertising on DeviantArt, selected someone who responded, and commissioned him to do a drawing. Didn't quite get what I wanted, and in print it actually looked even worse eventually, and eventually I just ditched it, went to a professional cover designer, commissioned them, and they did a completely new cover, and I relaunched my book. But then it was about 5 months after, I think, the original launch, so got a lot of more people interested and engaged, and the relaunch party went a lot better. But yes, next time I'll definitely employ the same cover designer. It's Ellie Brockhart-Osberger at Digital Creative Studios. She does covers, and she does really amazing covers. If you don't know how the process goes when somebody looks at a book at a bookstore or even online, first thing they see is the cover. The cover should be sort of immediately engaging and give them a clue about what's it about, right? If you see a picture of a naked guy with a six-pack on his chest, you kind of know, yes, I'm in for a romance there, right? Probably a cheap one, but yeah, that's just me. If you see a fantasy...
covers are important. I mean, when I first started picking books when I was younger, I would stand back from the bookshelf and just scan the covers and see what caught my eye.
Yeah, absolutely. So your book does get judged by its cover. And then when somebody picks it, you need a blurb at the back that'll draw them in. And again, it needs to set an expectation of this is what the book is about. Like, this is a fantasy, this is a romance, this is a thriller. The cover, the blurb, etc. should set this expectation so they know what they're getting into, because they usually are in a particular mood for something when they look. Or at least once they start reading, they shouldn't be disappointed that they had one expectation and got something completely different. And then you have the openness. Yeah.
Actually, that happened with me. A friend recommended a book by title, never told me the author. Mm-hmm. So I ended up jumping on Amazon, grabbing a book with that same title. She didn't give me any clues to the content, the type of book I was looking for, the cover. I ended up reading a completely different book. But I got into the book. It was the title of the book was Bite Me. And while she was reading something that was humorous and satire, I was reading a vampire romance twisted fantasy thing. And so finally I grabbed the right book, Bite Me, and read it and laughed like crazy. So when people recommend books, I recommend giving title and author.
Absolutely.
Or better yet, in this digital age, just send them a link.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, well, it was funny and I enjoyed the book. It was one of those things I'm not sure I would have originally ever picked it up. I'm not into vampires and I'm not into romance, but there was enough action in there. Being a thriller reader, my favorite genre is thriller. So being a thriller reader, there was enough action in there to keep my attention.
Yeah.
So, and I look forward to checking out your book. Is there any topics you wanted to touch on that we haven't covered? Anything you meant? Is there anything you want to mention, or anything else you want to talk about that we've missed? Oh, I do have to point out your love of coffee.
Yes.
I found that blog post particularly interesting, particularly as I'm quite the coffee drinker myself.
I think all authors run on coffee. It's impossible not to. We survive for long stretches of time on coffee. Yes, I do like my coffee. There's two types of coffee that I normally drink, both black. One is Lebanese coffee, which is spiced with cardamom. Sort of grew up on that, particularly in the military service in Israel, and got used to it. It's dark and rich and quite heavy. And the other one is, the classic espresso, which I use a short stovetop machine to make at home. And the funny thing is, you know how espressos are served in small caps and small little glasses? And the machine that I had, the pot that I had, came up with a silly notion that it's fit for 6 cups. And I have no idea what they're talking about because I just pour everything into one big mug and drink it in the morning. So
that sounds like me. I have to have my caffeine. In fact, my husband would tell you I'm quite disagreeable until I have coffee. And the only way to summon me out of bed is to tell me that the coffee's already made and he's got a cup waiting for me if I come down the hallway from the bedroom.
Yeah. I actually put a scene that in the book that Felix prepares himself some ancient brew to keep up all night. Doesn't name it coffee, but in Scrivener, the scene is actually named coffee.
That's cool. So even your passion for coffee found its way into your manuscript.
Absolutely, yes. And that blog post that you refer to for the listeners, that was somebody asked me for content for a guest blog post for their site, and it was Sunday morning, and I had a few minutes before everybody wakes up and the baby wakes up and the kids, and I start to need to make pancakes and everything, and I didn't even have coffee yet, so I wrote a couple of limericks, reducing the novel to a couple of limericks. That's what happens when I'm running without coffee. Yes,
I thought the blog post was actually interesting and got quite a chuckle out of it. And it did actually make me want to read the book. So I think it was a success, even though it was written without your beloved coffee.
Yeah. I think it's either too little coffee or too much coffee. That gets you into all those hilarious conversation on Twitter or wherever, or writes things that you look at them in the morning and say what the hell was I on? Yeah, you need to get the coffee level in your bloodstream just right.
Trust me, caffeine. Running out of coffee in this house is a crime.
Yes.
Not allowed to run out of coffee. I have a feeling you have a similar feeling.
Absolutely.
So, what advice would you give to a new writer just starting out?
Right. I blog a lot about the advice that I give. But in general, breathe. Seriously, just take a moment and stop and breathe. Writing a book is something for the long haul. It's not a quick thing. It's not an overnight success. It's something that you do because you enjoy it, and it's going to take you some time. So to write the first draft, sit down and write it and do a little bit every day. And when you get to the end, just breathe, let it sit there, and then self-edit it, and then start getting beta readers involved. And then when you get the feedback, sit down and breathe deeply, calm down, and then take the feedback on. And then the same with the whole publishing process, with chasing after agents or doing self-publishing, however you want to do. Take a deep breath, work on it every day, do a little bit. Never give up. Never, get discouraged, just keep at it. And it's the same afterwards. After you have it published, and you have the whole marketing bit, which is reaching out to readers, getting review copies out, gathering those reviews, doing all the promotions, the sales, everything. take a deep breath and keep doing it. You're in it for the long haul. You're in it for the year, for years. Start your next book when you're ready. Just keep working on it.
I think that's great advice.
Thank you.
So, we've touched a lot on the author platform. When do you think someone should start an author platform? And when should should they start it when they start page 1 of their manuscript? Should they start it 6 months before they publish? At what point should somebody actually put out that social media presence and try and start interacting with others, both readers, writers, etc.?
It's not a hard and fast rule. It's a bit of an individual thing. For example, I hardly do any writing challenges. I know that a lot of people really enjoy writing exercises, challenges, etc. I don't. And if I have the time to sit down and write 500 words, I'll do it on my own novel, not on some random challenge. But that can get you engaged with a lot of community, etc. Putting your samples of writing, getting critique, etc. It's a very individual process. It's very much depends on your self-assurance, etc. But in general, I'd say once you have the first draft finished, okay, that's probably this time that you need to start looking outside it, looking at starting building your replication seriously. The way that I do it, besides participating in all those events and discussions, etc., is also by putting out short stories. I think it's a great distraction from all the marketing stuff and all the other things that you need to do. So while I'm writing the novels, I don't really write short stories because, like I said, if I have the time to write, I'll sit down and write another scene in my own novel. But it takes double that time of actually writing to do the editing and do the publishing, etc. And during the time, I didn't have a lot of energy to start the new book, but I did want to keep writing. So I wrote out a lot of short stories. And I think that worked out really well in building the platform as well, because you put out a short story. And it's there, you can reference it later, and you can tell people, well, look, if you want to try before you buy my novel, here's a short story. You don't even have to commit to getting the free preview from Amazon. You can just write a quick, couple 1,000 words worth of short story and figure out, is this the kind of thing that you want to get into? Because in my case, the short stories involve the same character and world. So, and it also keeps you in practice and keeps your juices going. And I just found that the more I write, the more ideas I get to write. So inspiration is never the problem. It's the 99% perspiration that's always the problem. So just keep a notebook, and when I feel like it, I just sit down and write a short story and then publish it, etc.
So your short stories you publish on your blog site?
Yep. So if you go to my website, there's a tab there, short stories. There's about 5 or 6 of them currently out, plus a couple more that are flash fiction, not to do with Felix, just pure fun. I try to publish about once a month or so, depending on how busy I am. Obviously, I write them ahead and then let them simmer before I edit and publish. And yeah.
That's a good thing. I know some writers, especially when it comes to flash fiction, they'll just jot it down and give it a quick proofread and throw it up there the next day. Mm. Well, some of those can be very fun and interesting. I also think that, sometimes if you maybe let it stew a little bit longer, it would have been that much better. Other times you get lucky and lightning strikes and it's great. So are you going to stick with self-publishing, or are you going to try and venture into the traditional publishing world? What are your thoughts and feelings based on, between self-pub, traditional pub?
I think the publishing industry is the last of the old god media giants. It's dying now, the same way that the music industry and the movie industry did in the 80s and 90s, and for the past 30 years in general. There is a shift going on in there, and all the traditional publishers will have to rethink their business models quite significantly. And the way that they're doing it now, the way that they're trying to rethink it now, isn't particularly... I don't think they're on the right path. Now, not a publishing guru. I haven't spent, the last 30 years in publishing, so my opinion is purely my opinion, which I'm entitled to, but it should not be construed as an expert analysis. But from what I see, the traditional publishers, they're not necessarily on the right route to keep the business as it's going. That said, I think traditional publishers can have a lot of good inputs for authors, and they can provide a lot of good services for authors. Whether I myself go to a traditional publisher or not, I don't think I will, not for the next couple of books. I think I have a good setup now, and I'm beginning to get more and more reviews and sales, etc. So I don't think I need to particularly worry about that. The one thing that traditional publishers can do that it's almost impossible to do as a small-time publisher is getting into brick-and-mortar shops. But then,
honestly, other than at book signings with famous authors such as Brad Thor, I can't tell you the last time I bought a book in a brick-and-mortar store. And during the book signing, I'll buy, a couple of copies of the book that's being signed that day just so I can have that moment and get it signed. And honestly, I don't think I've actually read any of my signed books. They sit on my bookshelf, and the author gets lucky because I'll buy the Kindle version because my Kindle's always close at hand. And I love the fact that I can have 1,000 books in the palm of my hand. So I really think Kindle changed the way I read.
Oh, absolutely. And it did for me. I mean, I had a library of physical books that I've built over many years, a couple of decades, that probably well over 1,000 books, probably close to a couple of thousand books. Unfortunately, it now lost to a crazy ex-wife, a psychotic mother, and a bonfire. But I now read everything on my Kindle. So I'm like you. My Kindle is loaded up with all of my library, and it's all backed up online, so I never lose anything. My wife, on the other hand, she likes physical books. She just doesn't like reading electronic devices. She likes the feel of paper in her hands. So there's quite a bit of people like that in the world. So that said, I think it's just a different market segment. And my book is out there. If anyone wants to buy paperback copies, they can through Amazon as well. I think that getting into traditional bookstores, etc., it's also a matter of margins. The cost of producing the book, the cost of distributing the book, and the cost of the actual bookstore, they leave you with very, very little money unless you try to sell the book quite high. And if you're a new author and you try to sell the book for $30, and it's like, yeah, I never heard of you, I don't know what that is. It seems a bit high to take a risk, but if it's on Amazon and you say it for $3, not $30, people will figure, whatever, one cup of coffee, I'll try it, I'll give it a chance. I can even get, a third of it as a free sample on the Kindle anyway to try. So yes, it does change quite a bit how people look at books.
I agree. Like I said, I love my Kindle. It's rarely more than a few feet away from me. In fact, I can see it from where I sit recording this. It's on my desk, just a few inches behind my laptop. And you were mentioning, the old industries. Well, just think of this. This podcast wouldn't have been possible a decade ago.
Exactly.
And so it does show how much technology has changed the way we get information, disseminate information, and even create things. So I am going to try going the traditional route. I understand that I may end up being self-published. I do want to try the traditional route first, just because I'm stubborn.
I also think that the traditional publishers, especially today, with the market being ripped from under their feet, they're very cautious. They want to see it's a business, right? They take a bet on you that them putting all the money behind you will get them a return. So they're not keen on new authors. They want to see, and if they do take up new authors, they want to see that you at least already have a platform and already have some followers, which is a bit of chicken and egg. And on the other hand, they'll publish something like Snooki's Memories of Jersey Shore because they know that will sell. It's absolute crap. It's not even worth going down the toilet, but it will sell.
I have to admit that made me laugh because there are certain memoirs I have avoided because no offense, Snooki, I could care less, and I've never watched a single episode of Jersey Shore, so I am not your target market. Now, if Brad Thor ever puts out his memoirs, that, because he's a beloved author of mine, I'd probably buy, because he does some fascinating things away from his desk. He's on Twitter, and he's got the Facebook page. He's got the author platform, and exactly. I find him fascinating as a human. And that's one thing I'd like to say is, if you're an author or writer out there, every tweet does not need to be about your writing. Show the fact that you're human. Tell the story about what your kid, cat, dog, parrot did. It makes you seem well-rounded and more human.
Absolutely. And people, when they pick up a book, it's because they care about it. I mean, all decisions in life are not rational. They're all emotional. We use rational thinking to justify our emotional decisions. That's something that all good salespeople know, and people mistakenly believe that people in government or whatever make rational decisions. Nobody makes rational decisions. So when you engage with people, when you're a human, just like them, right, a person with his own challenges and his own interests and everything, they react to that and they connect to that a lot better. And then they get interested in your book as well, because by that point, they're just interested and engaged. It's very true.
All right. So why don't you give the title of your book and your website one last time?
Cool. Title of the book is Murder in Absentia. It's available on Amazon. My website is egretia.com, egretia.com. It's my author platform, as you like to call it, or my blog. One thing we haven't touched, maybe, if we still have time, is...
We have all the time you need.
Ah, cool. Then, about all those interesting personal angles, etc. Like we mentioned before, I do a lot of research for my book about Roman daily lives, etc. So I can provide you with anecdotes about ancient Rome or ancient religions from here till next Tuesday, probably. But just to pick up a few that, get really funny. One thing that really is my pet peeve is when people think Roman mythology is just Greek with different names. Oh, so they call Jews Jupiter, and that's about it. No, it's not. It's a completely different religion. When ancient people encountered one another, they say, that person you speak of as Zeus, that big dude in the sky with lightning bolts, that's what I call Jupiter, so that's kind of the same. Or you call your love goddess Aphrodite, I call her Venus, so we'll kind of think this mythology is the same. And later down the years, a lot of the mythology did blend. But in the beginning, there were very different religions. You can also see it in the Romans encountering the Celtic religion or encountering the Egyptian religion, etc. There's always this sort of mapping of, before we just kill each other, let's find out what we're talking about. So Romans had a god for everything. The presence of divinities in their life was pervasive in astonishing numbers. So yes, there are the 12 major Olympian, the 12 major gods, but the Romans had slightly different divisions, and they also had a bucket load of small divinities. My favorite one is probably Cloacina. Cloacina was the goddess of the sewers and the goddess of sexual marital relations.
I have to admit that's one I've never heard of.
Yep. Well, anybody who knows biology knows what a cloaca is in birds and in lizards, and that comes from the Latin words for sewer, the cloaca maxima. And they had a goddess for the sewer, Cloacina. And it fascinates me, how on earth did they associate sewage with sexual marital relations? Yes. I think every good novel should have a scene in the sewers. And I put one in almost every one of my novels because, getting down to the nitty-gritty is and the dirty bits of life, I think, adds a lot of character to the novels. So yes, when my character walks out of the sewer, alive after everything, he does make a sacrifice offering to Cloacina for keeping him safe. And he does mention that he stands in the queue for the sewage workers, not for the forlorn husbands who seek resolution for their erectile dysfunction problems.
That's a good one.
Yep. So that's all true, and there's a lot of similar references for God. That's I think part of the reason why I like historical fantasy so much. It's when you actually construct a world, you can go to great lengths to create mythology, and you can create a great lengths to create the gods and the people and the beliefs, etc. But we as humans tend to create something that's reasonable and self-consistent. And if you go into history, it's not reasonable. It's not self-consistent. Those people believed 6 impossible things before breakfast and had no issue eating their breakfast, which, by the way, often was bread dipped in wine. So,
well, the wine was probably safer than the water.
That's actually another myth. All the ancient settlements were based on rivers and wells, etc., because people drank water and they used water daily for everything. Water was actually safe. They liked wine because the same reason we like wine. It's fun. So, yes.
Well, thank you for dispelling that myth about water and wine.
My pleasure. But yeah, so when you look at the richness of an historical setting, you find so many things from little mannerisms, little habits, little gods or practices or whatnot that are just so involved and make you think like, what on earth were they thinking? So creating a world based on such a setting is wonderful. I think it adds such a rich and, in a sense, believable atmosphere to the novel. You just can't compete when you just try to create everything from scratch yourself.
Not to run down another rabbit trail, but I just thought of a topic we haven't discussed about writing. Writer's block. Did you ever encounter it? And if so, how did you handle it?
Not exactly. There was, as I said, when I wrote the first novel, there was a point, I set myself a target to write a certain goal, a certain number of words every day, and mostly I've met that. But towards the end, probably writing the last quarter of the book, that was the book when tying all the loose ends together. There was a point where there was one weekend when I was just battling with, trying to get everything to connect and head towards the common resolution. And I just said, well, fuck this. Went out to the park, played with the kids. That was before the baby. I have 4 kids. If anybody wonders why I don't have time. Came back on the following week and just started writing again, and everything clicked into place. So I think one of the most wonderful things you can do for our writer block is, yes, you need to write every day. It's good for you, but just like every other rule in life, take it with moderation. Sometimes saying, fuck this, going on a nice walk or getting a weekend of rest or something is going to be good for you. So that's what I find most helpful. Bit of fresh air.
So time away from the keyboard can be just as good as time spent in front of the keyboard.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if you spend it, getting some fresh air and exercise. Nothing better to get your creative juices flowing.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this interview. I think it's gone incredibly well. And just as we wrap up, why don't you tell us where we can find you on the digital world?
I think this is about the third time I mention it. Like I said, I'm on Amazon. I'm on igretia.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook.
What's your Twitter handle?
Assaph Mehr. It's quite easy. Just my full name. If you search for it on Facebook as well, you'll find it. Actually, if you just Google my name, you'll probably find references for my writing site, etc. I think that I've taken over my previous online presence quite a bit by now.
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it also helps that my name was very, very common where I grew up among my generation. I always had another kid or two in my class called Assaph, but I'm the only one who's crazy enough to spell it that way. So, yeah, I'm pretty much the only Assaph who spelled it with a double S and a PH around the world. So, quite easy to find me on everywhere, pretty much.
Well, I will include a link to your website and, and your Twitter profile when I publish this podcast, and I thank you very much for taking the time out of your very crazy schedule to do this interview.
My pleasure. I enjoyed being here very much. Thank you for having me on your show.